She smiled like it was part of the show, like this had all been rehearsed, and I had forgotten my cue. We were standing near the head table between champagne towers and soft jazz, surrounded by 200 people who'd just finished applauding. My hands were still at my sides. Hers weren't. Her palm cracked across my face with the kind of force you don't expect from someone wearing ivory lace and a French manicure. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. A message dressed in silk. The gasp came next, collective, sharp, unanimous, like the entire room exhaled at once, and then silence. No music, no chatter, just the sound of my diamond earring skipping across the ballroom floor. I didn't reach for it. I didn't touch my cheek. I didn't speak, because I knew something she didn't, something no one in that room could possibly understand yet. This wasn't just about property. This wasn't just about a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and hand-laid walnut floors. It wasn't about the fact that I paid for every rose on every table, or that my name was missing from the program. It was about what they thought I was worth, and right then, that worth was equal to one slap. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd. Some guests averted their eyes. Others stared. A few even looked proud of her, as if I deserved it. As if saying no to a bride on her wedding day, especially when you're the mother-in-law, was enough to erase decades of sacrifice. She had planned this moment, or maybe she thought I'd cave before it got this far. But she didn't know me. Not really. I walked away without a word, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because what came next didn't require a microphone, only clarity. By the time I reached the back of the ballroom, I could already hear whispers rising like steam. I stepped into the corridor. My cheek burned. My chest didn't, because deep down I'd known this was coming, and I'd prepared for it. Or my name wasn't printed on the program. No mother of the groom, no line of acknowledgement, not even a middle-row seat with my name on it. Just a chair near the edge of the ballroom, placed so far off-center I could hear the kitchen door swinging open behind me during the ceremony. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I sat through the vows anyway. I smiled when the minister said, "Family is everything." I even clapped when they kissed, careful not to let the tremble in my fingers show. The makeup artist had done a good job. So had I. You couldn't see grief under foundation, not if you'd been doing it for 20 years. Widowed at 42, sole parent since my son was 10. I built my first rental duplex while teaching night classes. My first office opened when I had just enough in savings and too little in backup. My firm grew slowly, locally, carefully. And when my son got into college, it was my signature on every tuition check. He never went without, not once. So yes, I paid for this wedding, quietly, willingly. Every flower arrangement, every linen napkin folded just so, even the string quartet tucked in the corner. I did it all because he asked. Because he said it would mean a lot, Mom. What he didn't say was, "You won't be thanked for it." But that part was understood. She always called me Barbara, never Mom. Not even after the engagement. Her parents took center stage early, glossy people with polished voices and a way of making sure I was always standing just slightly behind. When the planning began, I wasn't consulted. I was contacted for payments. No one saw it. Or maybe no one cared to. That's the thing about being useful. You're visible when they need you, not when they honor you. At the final dress fitting, she told me gently, with the kind of smile that warns you not to make it awkward, "We thought it would be simpler to keep the program clean. No offense." "None taken," I said. I'd already started updating mine. The first toast was from her father. The second from her college roommate. The third, apparently, was a surprise. The bride took the mic with a laugh that dripped sugar, both hands clasped in front of her like she was making a prayer. "We just want to say thank you," she beamed, eyes scanning the room as if we were all her beloved. "To everyone who made this day possible, but especially to someone very special." I felt it coming, the shift in temperature, the rehearsed rhythm of her voice. She turned toward me. "Barbara, we're so thankful to be moving into your penthouse after the honeymoon. It's such a generous gift, and we promise to take care of it." There it was. The applause came quick before the words fully sank in. People smiled. Some gasped. One woman put her hand to her chest like I'd just donated an organ. My fork stopped midair. My son, standing behind her, didn't meet my eyes. He looked at the floor. That told me everything. He knew. He'd known for days, maybe weeks. Maybe since they toured the place in February just to see the view. Maybe since they asked for decorating recommendations without asking for permission. He'd stood by and let her do this publicly, deliberately. Corner me with applause, pin me with cameras, because they thought I wouldn't say no in front of a crowd. They were right about the crowd. They were wrong about me. I placed my napkin on the table and stood slowly, not touching my glass. I didn't walk toward the mic. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I let the silence speak first. Then, loud enough to carry, I said, "That was never agreed upon." The bride's smile twitched. "Oh, we must have misunderstood," she said quickly, her voice rising. "We just assumed since you said—" "I didn't," I replied. Her jaw clenched, and then, without hesitation, she slapped me, right there between the centerpieces and the champagne. My son didn't move, and I finally understood why. That was never agreed upon. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The mic was still on. The crowd was already watching. The bride blinked, frozen for a beat, like she hadn't prepared for pushback. "You're selfish," she said finally, her voice sharpening. "It's just a building." I smiled again, smaller this time. And then she stepped forward, closed the space between us, and slapped me hard enough that my head turned. Gasps, a few cries. Someone dropped a glass, but what rang loudest was the silence, the kind that stretches and swells and stings. I didn't touch my cheek. I didn't flinch. The mic was still live, and so were 3 phones pointed straight at us. She realized it too, because her eyes darted sideways toward one of the tables. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Across the room, my son finally looked up. He didn't look horrified. He looked caught. That was the moment I felt it snap, whatever was left of the thread between us, the loyalty, the benefit of the doubt, the last piece of belief I'd been carrying for too long. It gave out quietly, completely. Someone from his side of the family called out, "It's a wedding! Don't make it about money!" Someone else clapped again awkwardly, trying to restart the cheer. The bride grabbed the mic like she was reclaiming something. "I just thought," she said now, full performance voice trembling, "I just thought she loved us enough to help us start our life." More gasps, more murmurs, some sympathetic, some stunned. She turned toward me. "Why would you want to keep it all to yourself?" "Because I earned it. Because no one gave it to me in a ribboned box. Because I lived alone for years in a city that didn't care if I succeeded. Because I bought every square foot of that penthouse with contracts, calls, and commission checks no one in this room ever asked about." I didn't answer her, not there. I simply turned and walked out. And as I passed the doors, I remembered the clause, the one tucked quietly into the deed. I didn't pour a drink. I didn't cry. I didn't touch the cheek that still burned. I took off my heels, set them neatly by the door, and called my lawyer. He answered on the first ring. "Is this about the clause?" he asked, already a step ahead. "It's happening," I said. "Public coercion, multiple witnesses, cameras too." There was a brief pause, then we recovered fully. Years ago, after a different holiday turned hostile, we'd added a paragraph to the penthouse deed. It was quiet, technical, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking closely. If anyone, family or otherwise, attempted to coerce, pressure, manipulate, or stage a forced transfer of ownership, the property would immediately fall under protective oversight. The trust I'd built would freeze the asset, initiate a legal shield, and notify counsel. It wasn't just about the apartment. It was about peace. The clause had been my lawyer's idea. "You give too much," he'd said back then. "One day someone's going to try to take." He was right. That day came with white roses, a 5-tier cake, and a slap in front of 200 people. "I've already filed the trigger notice," he said. "Now the penthouse is frozen. Nobody can touch it, not even you, for 72 hours while we lock it down." "Perfect." "There's more," he added. "The live stream. It was saved, shared, you're trending." I exhaled through my nose slowly. "Of course I am. They didn't realize the microphone was still hot." "No," he said. "They thought you'd stay quiet like always." He paused again. "Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet." I wasn't in a rush. Revenge wasn't the goal. Not really. I just wanted the line to be drawn so cleanly no one would dare step near it again. "Can you notify the building?" I asked. "Already done. They'll be removing access for anyone not on your approved list, starting tonight." I thanked him, hung up, and walked into my living room. The windows stretched across the skyline like an earned horizon. I stood still for a long time, watching the city shimmer, knowing somewhere across it they were scrambling to rewrite a story I'd already sealed shut. By the time I slipped into pajamas and turned off the last lamp, my phone had already started vibrating. 3 missed calls, a dozen texts, 1 video. The slap, captured in perfect clarity, had made its way online. Not from a stranger, but from someone sitting at table 6, the groom's cousin, streaming the whole wedding to Instagram Live. By dinner, the clip had over 80,000 views. By midnight, it was on TikTok with subtitles, reaction clips, and slow-motion replays of my earrings sliding across the ballroom floor. I didn't repost it. I didn't need to. It was already everywhere. At 12:42 a.m., a message came through from a number I recognized but hadn't saved. The groom's mother. "We're leaving. This is unacceptable. I am so sorry, Barbara. You didn't deserve that." Short, cold, final. By 1:30 a.m., another message followed. "They're canceling the honeymoon. We're asking Brian to stay with us while things get sorted." And just like that, the perfect fairy tale collapsed under its own weight. By morning, a second message from her husband. "There will be no legal transfers. Our family wants no part in this mess. Please know we support your decision." It was the most polite disowning I'd ever read. Apparently, the bride had gone into damage control, calling it a misunderstanding. She tried to say the slap was accidental, that she got emotional, and that I had misled everyone about the penthouse. But the internet didn't buy it. Neither did her new in-laws, and I suppose that was the difference. My son had watched me get slapped and said nothing. The groom's family saw it happen and packed their bags. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Decades of quiet sacrifices, of keeping the peace, of showing up with checkbooks and silence. And now one slap had cracked the whole mask wide open. By the next morning, the news had reached the office. Marcus, my partner, mentor, and the man who'd helped structure the Penthouse Trust, sent a short email. "Coffee today. I think it's time we made a few things clear." The diner was nearly empty when I arrived, a place he used to love as a boy. Sticky booths, burnt coffee, pancakes the size of dinner plates. He was already seated, same booth as always, looking down at his phone, not up at me. I slid into the booth across from him. He didn't stand. "Glad you came," he said, though his tone didn't match the words. I nodded once. "You asked." He folded his hands on the table like a man preparing for a negotiation. "You embarrassed us, Mom." Just like that. Not a greeting, not a sorry. I tilted my head. "You think I embarrassed you?" He leaned forward, keeping his voice low. "You could have handled it privately. It was her big day. You didn't have to—" "Say no," I cut in. "To a lie announced over a microphone?" He winced. "It wasn't a lie. It was premature." "Premature theft?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's a new one." He sighed. "You don't understand. She thought it would make everything perfect. A fresh start, a real home. You have the money, the space." I stared at him. My son, my only child. The boy I raised alone. Piano lessons, broken arms, awkward middle school dances, first jobs. And now here he was, excusing a public ambush and a slap because someone thought it would make things perfect. "She slapped me," I said evenly, in front of everyone, "and you stood there." He looked down at his hands. I didn't think she'd actually do that. "No," I agreed. "You thought I would fold like I always have." He didn't answer. I took out my wallet, set a 20 on the table, and stood. As I grabbed my purse, I said one more thing. Not loud, not cruel, just honest. She embarrassed herself when she raised her hand, not me. He didn't stop me as I left. Didn't chase, didn't call. Just sat there in the booth we used to share, where I once wiped syrup from his chin and promised he could be anything. Now I knew better. The lawyer didn't ask questions when I called. He simply said, "Come in," and had the file ready by the time I arrived. I'd reviewed it before, several times over the years. A living trust, a clean will, all properly structured. But this time, I brought a yellow notepad filled with edits. We went line by line. My son's name came out first. I didn't hesitate. "I want the penthouse placed in trust," I said. "Not for him, for his daughter." "On condition?" The lawyer nodded. "Condition," I confirmed. "She can only inherit it if she graduates college or builds a life on her own terms. No shortcuts, no claims through marriage, no power plays through guilt." He tapped the edge of the table with his pen. "And if she doesn't meet the condition? Then it goes to charity, housing for women who were never given safe homes." He raised an eyebrow. "You're certain?" I was. When we got to the letter portion, I asked to add a personal note, one that would be sealed and stored with the file. It wasn't long. "To my granddaughter," I wrote, If this reaches you, I hope you grew up differently than the people who once stood in this place before you. A home is not a prize, it is not a weapon, it is something sacred, earned through dignity and self-respect. If you've earned that, then the keys are yours. But if you expect to cry your way into someone else's work, walk away now. Love, Barbara. We sealed it with the papers. As I stood to leave, the lawyer said softly, "You know this won't go unnoticed." "I'm counting on that," I replied. By the time I returned home, the silence felt sharper. I walked through each room, not to admire, but to reclaim. I opened the linen closet, folded everything fresh, brewed coffee, and set 2 mugs, one for me, one for the version of myself I'd finally listened to. The penthouse hadn't changed, but I had. I looked out the window, then turned back toward the kitchen table, where an envelope now sat ready for delivery. The first call came 3 days later, her name on the screen. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. The second came that evening, then the third, the fourth. By morning, I'd blocked the number. Her parents tried a different route. Email. Something flowery about misunderstandings, how emotions had run high, how families should stick together through small mishaps. I didn't reply. I forwarded it straight to legal with one note. For documentation only, no response necessary. No one had asked how my cheek was. No one had apologized. The photographer sent the video. Unedited, crystal clear. I hadn't asked for it. He just said, "I figured you'd want it before it ends up elsewhere." It showed everything. The slap, the silence, the earring on the floor. My son's expression frozen, her smirk just before impact. A perfect timeline of entitlement unraveling in real time. I watched it once, no sound, then saved it to 2 drives. Not because I planned to share it. I didn't need revenge. I just needed a record. Proof that what happened wasn't in my head. Proof that I didn't provoke it. Proof that I stood there in silk, calm as stone, while the family I funded tried to erase me with a slap and a smile. Marcus texted me later that afternoon. "Board approved the funding transfer. You're the one handling the Charleston expansion. They trust you more than ever now." That was the shift. The one that didn't scream or slap or plead. The one that said, "I see you, I respect you, we value what you built." I printed that text and tucked it behind the deed to the penthouse. The calls stopped for a few days, then her number popped up again, this time from a different phone. I let it ring out. Silence, I'd learned, unsettles the ones who rely on chaos. I took my coffee to the balcony and let the wind move through the trees below. No noise, no apologies, no arguments, just quiet. And in the middle of it, a second envelope slid under my door, this time from someone I didn't expect. I brewed the coffee the same way I always had. Dark roast, no sugar, splash of cream. But it tasted different that morning. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was the absence of expectation. The sun had just started to rise, brushing the buildings with light. The city below still slept, unaware that somewhere up here, a woman had finally drawn her last line. I stepped onto the balcony barefoot, cup in hand. The breeze was cool, steady, familiar. Same view, same windows, same home. But for the first time in years, there was no guilt in the stillness, no tension in the corners, no suitcase waiting in the entryway because someone texted they'd be in town just for a night. No keys under the mat, no towels left out, no extra groceries just in case. Just one coffee mug, mine. I stood there, arms resting on the railing, watching the skyline I'd once fought to reach. The tower across the street where I closed my first $1 million deal. The office building where I earned every promotion they said I wouldn't. The bridge where I once cried quietly after another Sunday brunch turned into an ambush. And below it all, the streets that led back to a family who only valued me when I made their lives easier. Not anymore. Now no one could buzz up without permission. No one could claim my name to elevate theirs. This space, every square foot of it, had been paid for with grit, mistakes, and relentless work. It wasn't a gift, it wasn't luck. It was mine. The deed said so. The trust said so. My lawyer, who updated it with military precision, said so. And most importantly, I finally believed it myself. When I stepped back inside, I locked the door behind me, not out of fear, out of finality. I passed the yellow notepad still on the counter, the one with every name I'd crossed out, and the one I kept, my granddaughter. If she ever came to know me for real, not the version edited by others, I wanted her to know what ownership looked like. I wanted her to know peace could be chosen.